Begin today a new Perek Revi from Sechta Avoda Zara, Rabbi Shmuel, towards the bottom of Daf Memtes Samad Beis. Zakt Eilige Mishneh, Rabbi Shmuel Leime, Rabbi Shmuel says, Shaloi Shavanim Zu B'tzad Zu. If you find three racks that are one near each other, and it's B'tzad Markulis, it's on the side of an Avoda Zara that's called Markulis. This Markulis Avoda Zara was an Avoda Zara that they threw racks at it. That's how it was worshipped. Okay, so now, actually, it says in Mefarshim that the original name of this Avoda Zara is not Markulis, it's Kulis, which also comes from the term lekales, to praise. But the Chazal, when they referred to it, they added the term that it should be derogatory and not to name it as is, so they added Markulis. Now, when you find...
Mercury? Mercury, in English, they call it Mercury.
Okay.
That's speed.
Okay. So the Avoda Zara of Markulis, if you find three racks that are near each other, near this Avoda Zara, then asurais. Those racks are asur because it's connected to this Avoda Zara. Now Rashi here says that's when you find these three racks that are lying one near each other, and definitely, as we'll see from the Gemara, when you have two, and then on top of them is the third, that's definitely a sign that it's connected to this Markulis. However, if you find only two racks, then mutaris. Then it's allowed, it's not connected to the Markulis. The Chachamim say that the rule about this is different. If it's something that's close enough that you see it very near the Markulis itself, then asurais, then it'll be asur. The reason is because then we say that where these racks come from. They probably fell from this pile of racks of the Markulis itself. But if it's not close enough to it, then mutarais, it'll be mutter, even if it's three, because if it's not close enough, then I don't assume that it fell from this Markulis itself, and it doesn't matter, even if it's three, it's going to be mutter. Okay, so the Gemara here will explain this machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and the Chachamim. Sagt the Gemara Bishlei Rabbanan, so it's well understood what the Rabbanan are saying here. Kasavri, the Rabbanan hold, oivdin l'shvarim, that when they serve this Avoda Zara, even if there's something that breaks off from the original Avoda Zara, that broken piece is still something that can be worshipped as an Avoda Zara. And therefore the Chachamim say, if there are these racks that you see it close enough together with the Markulis, so then you'll say that it probably fell from the pile of racks of the Markulis itself. So asurais, therefore it's asur, because even though it broke off, but even after these racks roll off of it, but they still continue worshipping these racks along with the Markulis, Avoda Zara. But if it's further away, it's not close enough to the Markulis, so then mutaris. Then I say it's mutter because it doesn't come from this Avoda Zara. But Rabbi Shmuel's opinion that there's a distinction whether it's three or two, and it's lav dafke if it's near the Avoda Zara of Markulis. So then, how do we explain his opinion? My kasava. What does he hold? If Rabbi Shmuel says that they still worship this Avoda Zara even when it breaks off from the Avoda Zara, so then afilatarti nami litzer. So if we assume that it came from the Avoda Zara, so then why does it make a difference the number? If it's three or two, even two, if it's near enough, or you know that it came from the Avoda Zara, it should be asur. And if Rabbi Shmuel's opinion is that once the racks roll away and break off from the pile of the Markulis itself, so they don't anymore worship what broke off, so then afilat klas namiloi, even if it's three racks together, it also should be mutter because it's separated from the Avoda Zara. So what's the point of what Rabbi Shmuel says that there's a difference between two and three? So the Gemara explains that there's a few different possibilities here, and we'll know now exactly when Rabbi Shmuel and Chachamim argued. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Beyadua, if it's a case where you know for a fact, Shenashru mimenu, that these racks that are here fell and rolled down from this Markulis, Divrei HaKol asurais. Everybody would agree that it's asur because even when it breaks off and it rolls down from the Markulis, it's still going to be asur. Here the Gemara adds another detail to this. Even according to the opinion that says that that once there's something that breaks off from an Avoda Zara, since it broke off, they don't worship this anymore. It's not part of the Avoda Zara. Hanemili avodas kechavim. When do I say that? By a regular kind of Avoda Zara, the lav hainu orche. It's not regular that this should happen, that it should break off from the Avoda Zara. So when it does break off, that becomes separated. It's not part of the Avoda Zara. Aval hacha, but over here regarding this markulis, the meikare tevuri mitbiri. This Avoda Zara of markulis was never made as one piece. The rocks that they throw at it are not then cemented together, so it's just a pile of rocks. So it's natural for it to break off. So hainu orche, the fact that there are rocks that roll off on the side of it is a normal thing, and therefore any rocks that you know for a fact that rolled off from it, it's still part of the Avoda Zara, and it's going to be yasser. Now, ki pligi, where is there a machlokes bistama? When you find rocks near the markulis, and it's unknown whether it came from the Avoda Zara itself or not. In this itself, though, the Gemara explains that there could be two options. How close is it to the Avoda Zara itself? If it's right near the markulis itself, Rashi here says it's so close that it's either within a half amma or a amma to the markulis itself. So the ikele meimar minei nofal. So here it's logical to say that it rolled off from the Avoda Zara itself. So over here as well, there's no machlokes. Everybody would agree that it's us, even if you don't know for a fact, you didn't see, but it's close enough that we will assume that it comes from the Avoda Zara itself. Now, ki pligi, where's the machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and the Chachamim? B'meruchakis, when it's further away from the Avoda Zara itself. Now Rashi says, what does meruchakis mean? It's within 4 amas. It's not so close within a amma or a half amma, but it's within 4 amas of the Avoda Zara. That's when there's the machlokes here between Rabbi Shmuel and Chachamim. Now the Gemara interjects, this is all an explanation that was said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, and the Gemara interjects and asks, how could you say that the machlokes here is b'meruchakos when it's far? But v'ha b'tzad markulis ketani. The lashon of the Mishnah is on the side of the markulis, which sounds like they're arguing about rocks that are not far away from the markulis. It's right on the side of it. So the Gemara explains, the bitzad means my bitzad arba ames didei. On the side means that it's within the 4 ames of the markulis, but not mamish right near it, not within an amma or a half a amma of it, but it's within 4 ames of the markulis. Here is the machlokes when you find these rocks there, and you don't know that it rolled off from the markulis itself. So it's not close enough that you could assume that it rolled off from it. So now what's the machlokes? Rabbi Shmuel Savar, Rabbi Shmuel holds, even if we're going to say that it did not roll off from the markulis itself, but oisin markulis katan bitzad markulis gadol. The custom of this Avoda Zara was that they made a small markulis near a larger markulis. And therefore I say as follows, Shaloish, the damyan markulis, when you have 3 rocks that you find, which is similar to the large pile of rocks of the markulis. So the same also, when you have 3 rocks, that's the minimum to make a pile. So the 3 rocks is you have 2 and then 1 on top of it. Or even if they're not, the third is not on top, but 3 is the minimum that makes a pile. So then I say, this is the minig. The minig is by the Avoda Zara that you have a small markulis near the large markulis and asuris. It'll be aser within 4 amas of this Avoda Zara, even if it did not roll off from the big markulis. But if it's only 2 rocks, since it's not close enough that it rolled off, and it's also not the minig to make the small markulis just 2, so therefore it'll be mutter. That's Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. So the basis of what Rabbi Shmuel is saying is this minig, that they make a small markulis near the large one. However, Rabbanan Sabri, the Rabbanan that disagree with this, the Rabbanan said there's no such a thing. Ein oisin markulis katan bitzad markulis gadol. There's no small markulis that they make near the large markulis. There was no such minig regarding this Avoda Zara. So therefore, loishna shalish, v'loishna shtayim. It doesn't make a difference if we're talking about 3 rocks together or 2 rocks together. The only thing that matters is if it's niraisimai asurais. If you see it's close enough, it's very close to the markulis, so then I say it rolled off from the markulis itself, so it'll be aser. And she'ein niraisimai, if you don't see it's not so close to the markulis itself, then mutaris, then it'll be allowed because I assume that it did not rolled off from the Avoda Zara itself. That's the explanation for this machlokes, according to Rabbi Yechanan. Okay, so now here...
Both the Rabban say use the word, the tzad, and Rabbi Shmuel uses the word tzad.
No. Look in the Mishnah, Rabbi Shmuel is the one that uses the word b'tzad.
No, but over here, in the explanation. So are they both talking about b'tzad means...
Not the same tzad. Rabbi Shmuel is saying b'tzad within 4 amas. Within 4 amas, there's a minig that they made a small markulis near the large markulis. But Chachamim are saying nirisimai. Nirisimai has to be very close more than just 4 amas. And only when it's very close could I assume that it rolled off from the Markulis itself, and then it'll be Aser. Okay, now the Gemara will discuss a few details here of what Rabbi Yechanan said. So one of the points Rabbi Yechanan said is, "Biyudua shenoshru mimenu." If you know for a fact that the rocks here rolled off from the Avoda Zara, from the Markulis itself, divrei hakoil asurais. Everybody will agree that these rocks are aser. So the Gemara asks on this, "V'ramini." I'll ask you a contradiction on this from what it says in the Braise. Avonim shenoshru min Markulis, the rocks that rolled off from the Markulis, which means the Braise is saying we know for a fact that it rolled off from the Markulis, and still it makes a distinction. If it's close enough that you see it mamish together with the Markulis, that's aser. If you don't see it so close to the Markulis itself, then mutares, it's allowed. And then Rabbi Shmuel says, Shalosh asurais, when it's 3, it's aser, and shtayim mutares. If it's 2, it'll be mutar. So the question is, Rabbi Yechanan said, if you know for a fact that it rolled off from the Markulis itself, that everybody agrees it's always going to be aser. Because that's the nature of the Markulis. It was never cemented together, and it rolls off, and it's part of the Avoda Zara. Here it says that even when you know for a fact that it rolled off, nashru, it's only if it's very close to it that it'll be aser. So Rava says you have to change the word in this Braise. Lo taimish nashru. When it says here in the Braise, you don't read it that you know for a fact that these rocks rolled off. And le'emish nimtzu. You have to reach a nimtzu, that you find rocks that were found by the Markulis, and it's Tama, meaning you don't know for a fact that it actually rolled off from the Markulis. And then the Braise is saying, like the point that Rabbi Yechanan said before, that it'll depend if it was very near it, so you know that it rolled off from the Markulis itself. And if not, then it did not. Another question on what Rabbi Yechanan said, V'sava Rabbi Shmuel, is it true that Rabbi Shmuel holds that shtayim mutaris, that if it's only 2 rocks within 4 amis of the Markulis, then it'll be mutter? Because again, like Rabbi Yechanan explained, that their minig was that 3 is a small Markulis near the large one, but 2 is mutter. 2 is not their minig. So is that true? But we learned in the Braise, Rabbi Shmuel says, shtayim, that if there's only 2 rocks of this Markulis, so betfisalai, if it's in the same tfisa, which means basically it's in the same area as the Markulis, and what's considered to be the same area within 4 amas. An area is of any person or of any object is 4 amas. So if it's in the same tfisa of the Markulis, asurais, it'll be aser. So here Rabbi Shmuel is saying that even by 2, as long as it's within 4 amas of the Markulis, it'll be aser. Shalosh, if you have 3 rocks that are either side by side or one on top of the 2, then even if it's not in the same area, even if it's out of the 4 amas, it'll also be aser. So the whole explanation of Rabbi Yechanan was that even within 4 amas, only if it was 3, Rabbi Shmuel says it'll be aser. But if it's 2, it's not the minig to make with 2, and therefore it'll be mutter. So that is a contradiction to what it says in the Braise, that by 2, within 4 amas, it will be aser. So Rava explains, Lo kashya, it's not a contradiction. Kan betfisa achas. Over here, it's speaking about when it's within one area, within the 4 amas, and it's tfisa achas means there's nothing. It's like one area where you don't see any nothing that's separating between the Markulis itself and the area where you're finding these rocks. The ground is flat. That's the point there. The ground is flat, and you can see that it's within 4 amas of the Markulis itself. Over here, in this case, Rabbi Shmuel said in the Braise that we just quoted that even 2 will be aser. Right? So the Gemara basically, according to Rashi's Pshat, is changing from the point that it said before. Before the Gemara said that only if it's within a amma, or even within a half a amma to the Markulis itself, then I say that I assume that it fell from the Markulis itself. Now the Gemara is saying that what I see from this Braise here is that if it's betfisa achas, meaning it's within one area, within 4 amas, and it's a flat ground, then I say that the Markulis, the rocks that are here, even if it's just 2, it'll be aser.
What's the lashon tfisa? Tfisa means it could be grabbed where you
That's
are.
the literal lashon. That's the literal translation of tfisa.
One
Yeah, but that's what it means l'chayre. But it means Rashi says stam tfisa is 4 amas. But that's the translation of tfisa means you can grab it, but it means 4 amas. Now kan b'shtei tfisa is, and when Rabbi Yechanan before said that it's dafke when it's closer than 4 amas. But if it's within 4 amas, then 2 will be mutter. Why did he make such a distinction? The reason is because the pshat, Rabbi Yochanan, before he was speaking about a case where it's sort of 2 areas. What does it mean, 2 areas? The Gemara explains, V'hechi dami, the ikke goiva beini ubeini. It's because there's the markulis, and then there's the place where you found the rocks within 4 amas to the markulis, but it's not a flat ground. There's like a little mound in between. There's something and some kind of obstruction in between, or a mound in between, and therefore you're not going to say that it rolled off from the markulis itself. It's over there that Rabbi Yochanan said that according to Rabbi Shmuel, if it's 3, it's going to be aser, because the minig is to make 3 a small markulis near the large one. But if it's only 2, then it's going to be mutter. Right? So the point over here is that there's a difference between a situation where you see that it rolled off. According to what the Gemara is saying now, even within 4 amas, I assume that it rolled off. And with this, that Rabbi Yochanan said that within 4 amas, I don't assume that it rolled off, is because there was some kind of, it's not a flat ground. It's b'shtei tfisas, there's a mound in between. Then I say, only if it's mamish within an am or 2, do I say that it rolled off. But if it's not, then it'll be totally in the minig. The minig that they had was that 3 they made near the large Avoda Zara, and if it's 2, they did not make that near the large Avoda Zara of the markulis. Okay, that's the hesber over here. So according to Rashi, the Gemara sort of has charata from the point that it said before. There's a long Taisus over here about this. Taisus says it's not mashma in the Gemara, that it's having charata from what it said before. Taisus has a different pshat in the Gemara, but this is Rashi's pshat. Okay, but now the Gemara has the more general question here about this markulis. Umarkulis ki hai gavne mi have. Is this a markulis in the way that we're describing over here? Because what Rabbi Shmuel said in the Mishnah is that anytime you find 3 rocks, even if it's 3 rocks near each other, then it's going to be a markulis. And that's the minig. They made a small Avoda Zara near the large Avoda Zara. But the Gemara asks, is this a markulis? But Vatanya, we learned in the Braisa, Eluhein avne beis kulis. These are the rocks of the beis kulis. So here you see the name was the beis kulis. Achas mikan v'achas mikan, 1 rock and another rock, and then v'achas al gabein, and a 3rd rock on top of it. That's the markulis. So Amar Rava explains, Kitanya hi, when the Braisa here it describes the markulis, that's be'ikr markulis. That's how the markulis is originally made. That you have 1 and 1 and a 3rd on the top. But over here though, what Rabbi Shmuel is saying is that once you have the markulis, and then you have near it another 3 rocks, even if it's not in this way, even if you have just 3 rocks that are near each other, that'll also be like this secondary markulis, a smaller markulis near the larger markulis. Okay, the Gemara brings the incident that happened in connection to this markulis. By Yanai Malka, Chorev, the house of Yanai HaMelech was destroyed. So Asa Oiv Dekechavim, so Goyim came along, they're serving Avoda Zara, and they came, Oikimu Beir Markulis. They turned it into this Avoda Zara of markulis. It was a pile of rocks, and they were serving it as a markulis. Also, Oiv Dekechavim Machrini, other Goyim came along, the loy palchil markulis, and they do not worship this as an Avoda Zara. So shaklinu, they took these rocks and v'chipa ben drachim v'sartois or startois, and they used it to pave roads and highways. So now the question is, the roads and highways that were paved from these rocks that were once used as a markulis, are you allowed to have a nar from this? So the Gemara says, Ikar Abanon, the Parshi. There were some chachamim that separated from this. They did not want to travel on these roads or highways. But the Ikar Abanon, the Loi Parshi. But there were chachamim that did not separate from this. Okay, so what's the explanation for this? Why? We learned already before in the previous Pedic that the rule regarding Avoda Zara is that a guy has the ability to be mevatel an Avoda Zara. And not only his own Avoda Zara, a guy could be mevatel anybody's Avoda Zara. So here you had Goyim that were worshipping these rocks as Avoda Zara. Other Goyim came along and took it away and paved the road with it. They have a koyach to be mevatel this Avoda Zara. So why is there a problem of it? They should be able to use this as a road, as a highway to walk on it. So the Gemara will explain.
They originally belonged to Yanai. They stole it from him.
No, but Yanai died, and it was Charev. It didn't belong to him anymore.
So it's Hefka.
Yeah, whatever, yeah. Kanira, yeah. So the Gemara explains what's behind this. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Benon shal kedoshim mahalach alein, that there was a Benon shal kedoshim, the son of a holy one. He travels on this road, Vanan nifresh man, and we should separate from this road. Man niu benon shel kedoshim. Who is this son of a holy one that we're saying that he traveled on this road? Rab Menachem berab Simoi. This is Rab Menachem berab Simoi. Why was he referred to with this title as the son of the holy ones? That at the picture of the coin, he didn't look at the picture of this coin. This was a special midas chassidus that he had, that he didn't look at this. That was his greatness. That's why it's called Benon Shel Kedoshim. I think it sounds like from the lashon of the Gemara that it means that he was the son of his father. His father, Rab Simoi, was the one that didn't look at the picture of the coin. Okay, so now the Gemara explains, if even Rabbi Nachman and Rabbi Simoi did travel on this road, so then my time demand the parish. So what's the explanation of those that did separate and did not travel on this road that was paid from these rocks that were originally used as a markulis? They were mevatalit. The goyim have a koyach to then take it and be mevatalit. So the Gemara explains, Savala, Kihad, Amar of Gidl, Amar of Chiyah, Bar Yosef, Amar Rav. That Rabbi Gidl said the name of Chiyah Bar Yosef, he said in the name of Rav as follows. That over here, these rocks for the markulis is not the Avoda Zara itself. It has a different it's in a different category. What's its category? Takrevis Avoda Zara. It's something that is sacrificed for Avoda Zara. And Rav said as follows: Minayin litakrevis Avodas kechavim. From where do I know that something that is sacrificed for the Avoda Zara she'ela betela olamis, that you cannot nullify the status that it has and to make it muta ba'ana forever? Shanema, because the pasuk says until him vayitzamdu lebal po'er, they didn't desire the Baal Po'er, vayechlu zivchei mesim, and they ate zivchei mesim. So it refers to the Baal Po'er as zivchei mesim. What is now the zivchei? In other words, what you sacrifice for the Baal Po'er is called zivchei mesim, and therefore we compare ma meis ein lo b'teil lo. Just like a mace, the tumah by a mace is never nullified. After krevis avodas kechavim ein lo b'teil lo. It also will never be nullified. So this is a special chumrah regarding to krevis Avoda Zara. This is a very interesting thing. Avoda Zara itself, a guy is able to nullify it if he breaks it, if he's mevatel. But the takrevis Avoda Zara, that you cannot nullify.
It's not going to be mevatel.
Again, atchiyas mason. Okay, yeah. So what's the reason why is the krevis Avoda Zara more chomer? There are some Rishonim that say that this drasha from the pasuk, it's not be'emes drasha, it's a pasuk in Tilim, it's just like an asmachta, it's really a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. And the reason why it's more chomer is because the krevis Avoda Zara is, there's a hezbollah that the Taz says, that when it comes to Avoda Zara itself, the Avoda Zara that they're worshipping itself, if it's something which is choshev, then it's Avoda Zara. The moment Goyim decide that they're not worshipping it anymore, so it has no chshivas as Avoda Zara, so it becomes batal. It all depends on the significance of whether it has chshivas or not. However, when it comes to the takreves, why is it what you sacrifice for Avoda Zara aser? Because of the chshivas that it has. There's nothing to do with chshivas. The fact that it was sacrificed for the Avoda Zara is what makes it aser b'hana. So there's no way you can be mevatel that. It's not based on chshivas, so therefore you can't take away its iser by being mevatel its chshivas. And therefore takreves remains aser forever. So therefore those chachamim that did not want to travel on these roads that were made from the stones of the markulis, they held that these stones that they throw at the markulis is not the object of the Avoda Zara itself. Those stones that they throw at it is what they sacrifice, what they're serving the Avoda Zara with. So therefore that's not going to be bottled forever. Okay, now the Gemara explains, but Oman the loy parish. However, those chachamim that did not separate, and they did travel on these roads that were paved from these stones from the markulis, so Omar, they hold be'ina ke'en penim veleke. This is halacha regarding the takrevis of Avoda Zara, that it remains aser forever. It's only if it's similar to the way it is by a carbon that's brought in penim, in the Beis HaMikdash. Rashi brings a source for this because the pasuk says by Avoda Zara zoveach lo lehim yochram bilti lashem levadai. Right, so over there it's speaking about one that sacrifices to Avoda Zara yochram. It should become asa b'hana. You only should sacrifice to the Eibishter. So therefore we compare to the way it is when you sacrifice a carbon. Just like by a carbon, there's no such a thing as rocks that are brought for a carbon. So therefore over here as well, takrevis Avoda Zara does not take effect on rocks. It's on animals and other things that are sacrificed in the Beis HaMikdash. The halach of the krevis Avoda Zara takes effect as well regarding Avoda Zara, that it'll be asa forever. But regarding these rocks, that status does not take effect, and therefore, after they pave the roads with it, they're able to travel in it.
See, one number coolest has a special din in Avoda Zara because you don't do animals with it, you only do rocks with it.
Correct. Amar Rav Yosef bar Abba, Rav Yosef bar Abba said about this halacha we're learning here that Ikla Rabba bar Yirmiyah la'asren. Rabba bar Yirmiyah was found in our place. V'asa, and he came v'aisi masnita b'yodei, and he brought a brayse that taught as follows: a guy that brings the rocks from the markulis, and he paves roads and highways with these rocks. Mutaris, it's allowed to travel on it. Yisrael shehevi avonim in our markulis. However, a yid that brings the rocks from the markulis, and the yid takes them and he paves the roads and the highways with it. It'll be yaser. And we learned this before, and the reason is because a guy has the ability to be mevatel Avoda Zara, but a yid does not have the ability to be mevatel Avoda Zara. Now, on this, Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah said, that it was over here. Yeah, Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah said about this, that v'les nager, v'loy bar nager, the yifrekina. There's no nager or bar nager, which means no chacham, or the son of a chacham, that has the ability to explain pshat in this brayse. The term nager means either a locksmith, or a carpenter, which is a term that's used for the chachamim. If it means a lock, it means that the chachamim they sort of lock in the concept of a halacha to explain it clearly. So this is an expression that's used that a naga, bar naga, no chacham, or even the son of a chacham has the ability to explain this. Now, what's the problem with this brayse? So Amar Rav Sheisha said, "Ano loy nagar ano v'loy bar nagar ano." I'm not a chacham. I'm not a son of a chacham. Uperiknele, and I could explain the halacha in this brayse. And the Gemara explains, "My kushile." What's the question that he had in this brayse? That Rav Gidl, he had a problem with what the statement that Rav Gidl said. Rav Gidl said that any takrevis Avoda Zara, if it's sacrificed Avoda Zara, it can never be mevatlet. So how they taking the rocks of the markulis and paving roads from it, and it should be mutter, even if a guy does it, but it's takrevis Avoda Zara, so it should still be yaser. So Rav Sheisha says the answer is like the Gemara already said before, be'ina ke'en pnim v'leke. That no, over here regarding the rocks that are thrown on the markulis, it doesn't have the status of takrevis Avoda Zara, that it won't be bottled forever, because it's not similar to any carbon that's brought inside the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore, once you pave it, it will be mutter to use. Okay, now here, the Gemara brings another case, another brayse, that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah also brought, and he said that nobody could explain it. It's a completely different subject, but because it's the same idea, that he said that nobody could explain it, so the Gemara brings this here as well. Amar Rav Yosef bar Abba, Ikla Rabba Bar Yirmiyah la'asren. Rabba Bar Yirmiyah came to our place. V'asa v'aisim asnita b'yodeh. He came and he brought also and taught a brayse that says the following halachas. And this is a brayse that we'll discuss different halachas of working in a field on Cholamayid and on Shemitah. Of course, on Shemitah there's an issur to work in the field, and also on Cholamayid there are certain work in the fields that are not allowed. So the brayse says as follows: that maslien umizamen b'shvius. You're allowed to remove worms from the trees, and also mizamen, which means that you're going to put fertilizer on the tree itself. Rashi explains that when the tree itself, you see that the tree itself is not healthy with the tree, so they would put fertilizer to keep it fresh and good on the tree itself. So these two things are allowed to be done in Shemitah. But ve'ei maslien umizamen b'mayit. But on Cholamayid, to remove worms and put fertilizer on the tree is not allowed. Now, kan v'kan, both on Shemitah and on Cholamayid, ein megazmen. You're not allowed to prune the trees. And the point here is that when you put when you remove the worms or you put this fertilizer on the tree, what are you doing this for? It's not to improve the quality of the tree, that it should grow better. It's just to maintain the health of the tree, that it should be as is. Megaz means when you prune the trees, that helps the tree grow better, fresher branches and stronger. You're not allowed to do anything that's going to make it grow stronger, both not on Shemitah and not on Cholamayid. Now, v'sachin shemen ligzai, you're allowed to apply oil on these trees after you legazim, that is, after you prune the branches, so they put some oil on it to make it grow good. So that's allowed to be done, bein b'mayid, both on Cholamayid and bein b'shvius, and on Shemitah itself. It's that clears this brayse that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah brought. And he said about this brayse that v'les nager, v'loy bar nager, the Afrikine. There's no chacham or the son of a chacham that's able to explain the pshat in this brayse. So the Gemara here will go through all the details of the brayse to try to figure out what exactly was the question that he had in this brayse. So Amar Ravina said, Anole nagar anovel in bar nagar ano. I'm not a chacham or the son of a chacham and I could explain the pshat on this brisa. Michael Kashile, what was the question that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah had on this brisa? Ilay me moyid ashviis kakashile. That the question that he had is, why is this brisa making a distinction between cholamayid and shmita? Right, at the beginning of the brisa, it said regarding removing the worms or putting the fertilizer on the tree. So it said that that's allowed to be done on shmita, but not on cholamayid. What's the reason for this difference? Ma'ishno shvi is the shari. Why in shmita are we saying it's allowed? Or ma'ishno mayid, and why in cholamayid the asr? Are we saying that it's not allowed? So Ravina explains it's not a question. Me dummy, how could you compare the two? Shvi'es, when it comes to shmita, malacha asar achmana. What's the main thing that the Torah is asering? Not to do any work in the field. So therefore, removing the worms and putting the fertilizer on the tree is something that is in the category of doing work in the field. Or again, this is on shmita. It says that it is allowed because this is not in the category of doing work in the field, as I explained before, because it does not improve the field itself, it does not improve the trees, it just maintains it, that it should be healthy and it shouldn't die. So therefore, it's allowed. But tirche shari, on shmita, any strenuous work in the field is allowed. So therefore, even though removing these worms or fertilizing the tree is strenuous activity, but that's not a problem. You're not doing work in the field to improve the field. Now, mayid, however, when it comes to chalamayid, what's the issue of doing work in chalamayid? Afilet tirche nami aser. On chalamayid, the work that's aser, the point there is not that the field has to rest. The point is that a person should not do any strenuous activity on chalamayid. So therefore, this activity of removing the worms and fertilizing the tree is also something which takes a tirche, and therefore it's going to be aser. So therefore, that's not a question, b'chlal. That's what Ravina explains. Regarding chalamayid, the issur of doing work in chalamayid, it's famous that it's a machlokes rishonim, whether it's asam and atayra or it's only asam and rabbanan. But the main point of the issur of chalamayid is that you shouldn't take away from the simcha of Yom Tov, and therefore you shouldn't do anything which is strenuous activity. So that's not a question.
I don't know, walk onto lucha.
Okay. So what was his question that he had? Zium agizum kakashile. His question was that there's a contradiction in what the Braisa is saying, that zihum, which is to fertilize the trees itself, and then gizum, to prune the trees. That was the question that he had. Ma'ishna zihum, the shari. Why is it that we're saying that on shmita to fertilize the trees that's allowed, or ma'ishna gizum the asa? And why to prune the trees is it not allowed? That was the question Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah had. So the Gemara explains it's not the same thing. Midami, how could you compare them? Ziom aikumi ilona. When they fertilized the trees itself, that was just to maintain the health of the tree. So veshari, therefore that's allowed. You're not doing work to improve the property in Shemitah. However, gizom, when you prune the trees, avruye ilona. That's something that makes the tree healthier and stronger. You're adding to the growth of the tree, and therefore that's also. It's actually in the Torah. One of the things it says explicitly in the Torah on Shemitah is v'karmachal loy sizmar. You should not prune the vineyards. It's actually there is actually some Rishonim that say that because it says in the Torah karmacha, a vineyard, so therefore regarding all trees it's only aser midrabanan. So there, but the point is, even by all trees, it's because it improves the quality of the growth of the trees of aser. It's going to be aser. So that's also not a question. So therefore the Gemara says, Ve'elo, what was Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah's question? A contradiction from a different brisa, not in this brisa itself. Ziom aziom kakashile. He had a contradiction from what it says in this brisa regarding fertilizing the tree and what it said in a different brisa. In this brisa it said it's allowed because diktani maslin umizam mishvis. You can remove the worms and put the fertilizer on the tree itself in shmita. So but amini, and this the question was asked from what it says in a Mishnah actually. The Mishnah says mizamin asanatiyais. You could put this fertilizer on these young trees that are growing. You could also wrap them. They would wrap them in a cloth in order for it to not be exposed too much to the sun, to grow properly. And you could also cover the roots that it should not be exposed, that it should be healthy and grow. You could also build for it these small enclosures that it should grow well. And you can give it water ad Rosh Hashanah, all the way up to Rosh Hashanah itself. Which is a chiddush actually, because usually by Shemitah, you're not supposed to do any work at the end of the 6th year within 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, with Rabbanon. But over here though, these activities are allowed to be done with the tree all the way up to Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah. That's the Mishnah. Now, what do you see from this? The Rosh Hashanah in. These works are allowed to be done up to Rosh Hashanah. But B'Shviyas Lai, within Shemitah itself, it's not allowed. And one of the things that it mentioned over here is mizamen, which is to fertilize the tree. And the Braise that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah brought, it said that you are allowed to fertilize the tree itself even within Shemitah. That was the question of Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah. So the Gemara says there's an answer for this as well. Perhaps I can answer and say, the answer for this is like the point that Rav Ukva Bar Chama said regarding another point. That when it comes to this by olive trees, they would dig in the ground near the olive trees in order to help the roots be healthy. So he said that there's sometimes that this is going to be Asr and Shemitah, and sometimes it's allowed. There's two different types. One is done in order to make the tree stronger and healthier to grow better. So v'asr, so that's not allowed. That's work that you're making the tree grow stronger. And v'chad l'stumi pili v'shari. But another one is when you have the roots of the tree exposed. So sometimes there's cracks and openings that could cause the tree to die. So then to cover it and for the health of the tree, to maintain the health of the tree, that's allowed even in Shemitah. That's what Rav Ukva Bar Chama said regarding this work that's done by the olive trees. So Hachanami, here regarding the contradiction we have regarding fertilizing the tree itself, we could say, Trei zihamumi have. There are two different types, the way this is done. Chad is like komi ilana. One is just to maintain the health of the tree, which is what the Braise is talking about. And v'shari it's allowed. And v'chad, and another one is, which is what the Mishnah was talking about, la'avruye ilana. It actually makes the tree fresher and stronger, and v'aser. And therefore that's not allowed. That's an answer to this question, the stira that he had to the Mishnah. So the Gemara goes on to say, what was the question that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah said that it's such a strong question that nobody could answer? Ve'ela says the Gemara, there's another contradiction from a Mishnah. Siche asiche kakashile. Applying oil to this tree is the contradiction that he had, that here in this Braise it said that it's allowed, and in a Mishnah it said that when you apply oil, it's not allowed. As the Gemara here will quote. The Ktani, what did it say here in the Braise? Sachin shemen, you're allowed to apply oil. Legazum, after they prune the branches of the tree, you're allowed to apply oil to it, bein b'mayid, bein b'shvius. Whether this is during Cholamayid, whether on Shemitah. Now the question on this is, v'ramini, but what does it say in the Mishnah? Sachin esapagin. The Mishnah says that you're allowed to apply oil to these pagin, which are figs that are young figs that are not yet ripe. Umenakvin, you can make a hole in them, and they would fatten them with oil, but only ad Rosh Hashanah, only up until Rosh Hashanah. So that means ad Rosh Hashanah in, only up until Rosh Hashanah. But b'shviyas lai, within Shemitah itself, you're not allowed to do this. So this is the contradiction from a Mishnah to what it says in this Braise. So on this as well, the Gemara says, mi dami. You can't compare it to what it says in that Mishnah. Because hacha aikumi elane v'shari. Over here, when they would put the oil on the pruned branches of the trees, it actually did not make the tree stronger and better. It was just maintaining the health of the tree. But hasam patumi peire. Over there, what's being described in the Mishnah is they had the figs of the trees and they would fatten it, they would make holes in the figs and put in oil to make it fatter and stronger and better quality. So that's a patumi peire v'asra, and therefore it's asra. So that's not the question that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah had on this Braise that he said that nobody could answer, because there's a simple answer to this. So Amalei Rav Sama, Berei Rav Ashi l'Ravine. So Rav Sama Berei Rav Ashi says to Ravine, Bar Yirmiyah, or Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah, Siche de Moyed, Azium de Moyed Kakashile. The question that he had on this Braise was regarding Cholamayid itself. What the Braise says regarding applying this oil on Cholamayid, and regarding Zium, regarding fertilizing the tree, that was the problem that he had. Why? What did it say in the Braise? Regarding Siche, the Braise says that that's allowed. But regarding Zium, fertilizing the tree, that's not allowed in Cholamayid. That was the problem he had. Mechdi, let's see, Hayekumi v'Hayekumi. Both of these activities in the tree, they're both there to maintain the health of the tree. So Maishna, the Hay the Shari, or Maishna Hay the Aser. So therefore, what is the reason to make a distinction between them? Why is this allowed and why is this not allowed? Over here, there's no explanation in the difference between them. And apparently the Gemara understands that the level of tirche in both of them is the same. And they both basically do the same thing. They're just maintaining the health of the tree. Why? So why did the Brisa say that one is allowed and one not? Hainu de ka'amalei. This is what he said, that the Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah said, that less nager, v'loi bar nager, the yafrikina. That there is no chacham or the son of a chacham that could explain the pshat in this Brisa. Okay, so as I mentioned, the Gemara brings this up over here. It's a completely different subject, but it's a second case where we see that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah said this expression.